Thank you very much, Bio-Rad, for inviting me to be here and to speak about this topic that I have raised 2 years ago in a Bio-Rad meeting. And special thanks to Gianni for the full support that I'm getting from him every time that I need something. And now I would like to take the audience a little bit to sail uncharted waters, of quality control in semi-quantitative assays in serology and immunology. I'm not going to speak about blood bank because my colleague will continue with the blood bank. I'm fully aware that the audience, most of the audience is in clinical chemistry and hospital. I'm going to speak about a regional laboratory. This is in the northern part of Israel. A few introductory words about the Israeli healthcare system. It's not going good. No? Okay. In Israel, the participation in the insurance medical plan is compulsory. It's the insurance law. And in Israel, we're spending about 8% of our GDP on health. For example, in France and Germany, it's about 11 to 12%. In the States, 15 to 17%. It depends if it's WHO data or OECD. In Israel, it's only 8%. But all Israeli citizens are entitled to the same uniform basket, benefit package is a basket. And among all the goods in this basket, it's also the laboratory tests. In Israel, we have 4 HMOs, and Clalit Health Services, whom I serve, is the biggest HMO in Israel. It comprises about 56% of the population. We have 3 regional and 11 hospital laboratories. In our northern part of Israel, we have my laboratory. It's the second biggest laboratory in Clalit. It serves about 800,000 outpatients, over 220 clinics, and over 1,600 physicians. We are getting 14,000 samples per day, and last year we have performed 19 million tests. It's a multidisciplinary laboratory which has inside microbiology, hematology, biochemistry, tumor markers, immunology, serology, and endocrinology as well. We were the first laboratory ISO certified, clinical laboratory ISO certified in Israel in 1998. Our mission is overdoing more than 80,000 serology, immunology tests and results per month, to do it with all the quality that we can do, because quality is in our blood and other specimens as well. And we would like very much to make haute couture in spite of the mass production that we are doing. How we are performing it? This is a little bit of the panel of the serology, immunology. And I don't want you to read all it's stated here. What it is? Okay. But what I want just to emphasize is that there are here tests that half of the tests are sample to cutoff quantitative tests or semi-quantitative tests, and the part of them are also quantitative tests. But in my opinion, even if those are half quantitative and half qualitative tests, they can be dealt with quality control the same, because even a qualitative test, it has a number behind it. And we can use all the rules, most of the rules that we can use in clinical chemistry. We're using the usual plot, of course, and we have used it for a lot of time, putting inside the in-kit control and the third-party control, and making a lot of Levy-Jennings charts and Excel sheets and so on and so on. But it's for such a large panel of tests, it's very, very difficult. Unity Real-Time QC has proven to us as a big advantage, not because I'm speaking here in a meeting of Bio-Rad, but it's a really tremendous improvement in our work. Since the results are for the serology immunology are online, we have used it for a lot of time in chemistry, but for serology it's a big improve. There are all the results online. We can use different QC materials and levels, as I'll show you afterwards. We can set our reject and warning rules depending on the analyte, and not all the analytes are the same. We can put inside the chart all the remarks that we want, the maintenance services, and so on. The harmonization is very, very important for serology immunology. Harmonization between units of the same instrument, or harmonization between analyzers, because you can imagine with such a high number of tests, we have to have several units or several analyzers from the same brand name. Of course, harmonization per method or peer group, whatever you want to use. And we can set our analytical goals, and they are different for each test. And all the documentation, the reports that are really, really available. It's just looking very frightening, but frankly speaking, we don't have to upgrade our brains in order to be compatible with this computerization, because I think it's very, very friendly used. What we are using in the day-to-day work. We are using just as a stop rule the 1,3S, and as a trend, the 7-trend, for most of our tests. There are tests that we are using the 2S or 2,2S, but most of them are the 1,3S and 7-trend. And we have decided that with a lot of experience and data, there is no benefit to use very sophisticated rules. It's very important, however, to make all the controls and all the graph and to archive all the QC data, because retrospectively we are getting a lot of information in serology immunology. And there are also additional tools that we implement in day-to-day use. What are the special aspects of QC in serology? Of course, you are all aware that there are negative results and even below cutoff controls that we have to deal with. There are problems with the cutoff themselves, because we are rendering false negative or false positive results. That it means it's yes or none results, not a quantitative result. And their clinical relevance, because of the improper cutoff, can be tremendous. In part of our essays, there are crude calculations, sample to cutoff, and since it is a ratio, each part of this ratio, or the sample on the cutoff, can change by themselves. And we have to take in account the ratio between them and to give, for example, a qualitative result. As we have dealt with in the last Bio-Rad conference last year, there are no standards. Most of the tests are not standardized. And when you have no standard, the bias is very, very difficult to find it. And there are a lot of tests that are in arbitrary units and not international units. And if I'm speaking about biological variation, it's a very, very big issue in this test. For example, if the cutoff for CMV IgG is 7 international units, and the person has got her first result at 10, and afterwards she's rechecked and she's getting a 15, is 15 what it is? It's a reinfection, reactivation, or it's just the biological variation of the same 10 that she has got before? No data about it. If we just want to implement the CV of total IgG on this specific IgG, it will be useless, because the biological variation of IgG is about 5%. It's not useful in this context. Also, from the last meeting from Bio-Rad, we know that about the problem of the lack of standards from the point of technical and financial problems. There are regional epidemiological variation for some antigens, therefore the standard from one part of the world, it will not be the same as in the other part of the world. There are old standards that have to be renewed, for example, measles, mumps, and so on. The standard should include diagnostically relevant isotypes, because if you have a standard with only for IgG, it will not be in any context with IgM and IgA. It's a problem to find the right donors for the standards, because as you know, there are cross reactions. If we check for CMV and EBV can show a positive signal as a cross reaction, it's not the right donor for this standard, of course. And there is almost no harmonization between different technical platforms. It was proposed that the molecular assay could be a standard for the serology, but as you well know, there are tremendous differences between molecular assays and serological assays, and they cannot be interchangeable. Then we are using in-kit controls and independent third-party controls, and when the controls are very far away from the clinical decision point, there is no other means but to introduce pooled sera with all the drawbacks that we know that you have with pooled sera. But these are the real controls for different kinds of assays. I'm not going to elaborate a lot about this graph that all of you are using, but in serology, immunology, changing the imprecision from 5% to 10%, it will be very, very influential, at least in the borderline patients, those that are during the seroconversion phase, and this will be much more critical for them. What I'm meaning by seroconversion, this is the graph of HSV, as you can see, and this is a seroconversion panel, when you can see that IgM is increasing and the IgG is increasing from a state that the patient has not HSV before it. But it's not so easy just to make all the statistics on the points of this graph, because it's not just increasing and that's that. It can be a part that is past infection of reactivation. The IgG, which is supposed to remain high, can go lower. What it will be from the statistical point of view, what the patient or the doctor can be consulted on these topics. It's very difficult about it. And then we have to introduce in our system of quality control specific important sera. I'm sure that each laboratory, putting aside different sera that are very, very important for themselves, or seroconversion panels obtained in the laboratory, or by the manufacturers. They are both by the manufacturers, because those can give us additional information on those type of assays that are very, very tricky. About the gray zone, as you know, the imprecision should be lower than the gray zone. For example, if there is a cutoff is 1, plus minus 0.1, the imprecision should be lower than 10%. But very few serological assays have such an imprecision. We are tending to use those assays that have imprecision of less than 10%. But in different topics, you are allowing also imprecision of 20% because you don't have any other choice. Often the CV can help to define the gray zone. And if we are increasing the gray zone, it's better then to categorize the patient with a misclassification. As I have already mentioned, there are, for several of the tests, there is no standard, no reference analyzer. Is the most prevalent method something that can use us? All methods can be useful for us, and therefore we are using the external quality control for those questions. But even the external quality control, it's not such useful. For example, I have here an example from NIQUAS, for CMV IgG also, and the most prevalent analyzer that it's used is the VIDAS, you can see, and the intended result was a -1, but even with the VIDAS, we are getting false positive results. It's the most used instrument, and it's regarded as the gold standard. Another example, for example, for pertussis IgM. We have in our RCPA external quality control, there were only 4 laboratories reporting, 2 give negative and 2 positive results. Since RCPA is very, very useful for us because of their comment and interpretation, we have learned that there is the PERT group in Germany that have introduced this algorithm for performing the diagnosis, serological diagnosis for pertussis. And we are using it with the IgG and IgA, but not IgM at all. But reading carefully the instructions from RCPA, you can see that there is no gold standard for Bordetella pertussis. There is no consensus on the role of serology. The seroconvention is significant only when you have a pair of a test, and the CDC does not include at all antibody testing, but isolation of the Bordetella pertussis or PCR for Bordetella pertussis. Therefore, all this serology is questionable. And I have shown you already the antibody kinetics. Once there is only IgG and IgM, for example, for EBV, but there are also another antibodies that are for EBNA, for example, or avidity of antibodies that they can put in our frame the time of infection. And here, the quality control is very, very crucial. It's very, very important. So each reagent lot can show day by day small variation, and new lot reagent can show even a stronger variability. Since we know that 2 different lots of reagents may satisfy internal or external quality control, but with the given performance, in the direct impact, give different performance with direct impact on patient outcome. Therefore, we are going to the next step of QC on patient's level. Since the QC material, even handled in a proper manner, it's not the real thing, and it doesn't have any pre-analytical problem. It's not the best predictor to QC problems. I'm just going to show you a graph of the lot-to-lot variation based on the number of positive results on our tests for 2 lot numbers, as you can see here. The first lot number was 1914, and the median positive result was 10%, and the second one, 1650, and this is the median positive result based on our patient's results. The difference is between 10% positivity and a mean of 20% positivity. Just image to yourself that I'm giving positive results of CMV for 10% of our women that are checked, or afterwards we are giving to 20%. It's a tremendous difference. But we have to take in consideration that we have to have big numbers of results in order to see those statistics on the level of the patients, the positivity of the patients. Of course, we have to take in consideration that there are seasonal fluctuations that can influence those numbers. Then which QC material to adopt? As a rule in our laboratory, we are adapting each of them that I have spoken about. And we have to see that there is a trade-off between the quick error detection and probability to take the right decision. At the first place, calibrator is not a QC, but in-kit controls, it's just a quick error detection, but the probability of a right decision is not so high. Then we are going to the pulse and to the third-party control that it's a quick error detection, but also the probability of right detection is medium. And then we are going to the seroconversion panels that are expensive. We cannot use them each day, but when we have problems or new instruments that are installed. the external quality controls that can give us a high probability of high probability to take right decision, but the detection error is very, very slow. And then the patient's results that I think that are most of all very, very useful in terms of serology immunology. As I have already told you, we think that the quality control in serology immunology remains a little bit of art and not so science. Thank you.